Okay, good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. All right. Thanks. My name is Matt Miller. I'm the superintendent of Mentor Schools. If I haven't met you yet, I hope to do that here this morning. I really appreciate you starting your day off with us and for being here. I know you have 100 other things to be doing today, but I appreciate you giving your time and your input into this process. I go to a lot of meetings. I know that a lot of you do too, at different sessions. And the meetings, unfortunately, that we attend, sometimes it's just sit and get and you move on and there's no follow-up. This isn't going to be like that. This is the start of our community conversations about your school district and about the direction that we're going. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what we have been doing in Mentor Schools. Hopefully, most of what you see and what I talk about are things that you're familiar with, and if it's not, that's okay too. But I think it's good to give you a little bit of perspective. And then we have two ladies here from Burgess & Burgess who are going to talk about the next steps as we move forward. So we have a lot going on in Mentor, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Our grant really accelerated a lot of things that we have going on here, where usually when you have an undertaking like that, you go a little bit slower, but sometimes with grants and working with state governments and federal governments, notice I didn't say local, you have to go really fast, and we had to in that case. So I want to get you a little bit caught up about what we're doing, but really we need help. We need help about the direction that we're going in and what our future is going to entail, and we want you to be a part of that process. In Mentor, and a lot of schools in our area, we're very fortunate in Northeast Ohio to have forward-thinking schools, forward-thinking staff, teachers, and education leaders. We haven't changed. I know a few of you in the room have went to the movie we had last week called Most Likely to Succeed. But if you look at our classrooms, and this is not an age joke, but if you look at our classrooms, they haven't changed from when we were in school, or some of other people have gone to school, where kids were sitting in rows and we just drill things into their head. And I will be the first to admit that when I was in high school, I studied for that test and crammed for that test, and 3 days later I couldn't tell you anything that was on that test. So we're talking about and looking at what do we want the end product to be. So when our kids graduate and they cross that stage at Cleveland State and they get that diploma, are they really ready for the next day? Are we just looking at it in terms of we want to have really good high test scores? And that's important, don't get me wrong. Accountability is huge, vastly important, but I'm more concerned, and I think you are too, I hope you are, that we need to get our kids to the next step. Some kids we don't have to worry about, so to speak, in terms of self-motivation, in terms of getting into a good college, and most of our kids, quite honestly, don't graduate with that degree in 4 years. They're going to do something else. So I'm not in a position to say that all our kids should be going to college, because I don't think they should. Now we need to start talking about what careers we can provide for our kids the day after graduation or the weeks after graduation. And so, and I've engaged pretty well, I think, with our manufacturing sector, talking about what types of workforce do we need to get our kids ready for. So that's part of the equation too. The Straight A Fund that I mentioned is why we're having this meeting here in Paradigm. Paradigm is our professional development center that was built through a grant. So all the innovation you see in this building, the innovation you see at the high school was all provided through a grant. We didn't pay anything extra for it. So the state of Ohio did the grant. It was through the state of Ohio. It was $13.8 million. It was a partnership between Mentor Schools and Kirtland Schools. And Mentor Schools received $12 million of the $13.8 million. Kirtland received the remaining $1.8, and I'm just rounding for ease of math. But what we did was we were able to build this center, the PD center here called Paradigm, for our students and for our staff, and it's a regional center as well. That was all grant money. We redid 62 classrooms at Mentor High School, so when you go into Mentor High School now, it looks a lot different than when you may have been a student there or when you went to your high school. So our kids aren't sitting in rows. just sitting and getting. There's collaboration going on, there's discussion, there's group projects going on. And again, that was all through the grant. Devices for our kids, MacBook Airs, all through the grant. The other thing that the grant did was we gave our students more options. So these classes before the straight A grant we didn't offer currently because we didn't have the means, methods to do so. I'll give you an example, and some of my team members know I always say this one. Latin is a great language we got away from, but when you talk about Lake Health and the other health systems in the area and the medical field, Latin's a great subject, a great language to offer for those kids that would be interested in the medical field because it helps them. But a lot of schools get away from something like that because teachers aren't certified in it or there's not enough interest in it, but we do have kids that can take it. But those are courses now that we offer through the grant that we weren't offering before. One of the other things that we did was that we are committed to instructional technology for our kids. We want to get away from spending thousands of dollars in Mentor for textbooks that are already outdated when they come into our classrooms, and we're investing in more instructional digital resources that are more current for our kids and for our teachers, and so that was part of the Future Ready movement that we were a part of. Last week I had the privilege of presenting at the White House, not about myself, but about Mentor, and it was really cool to talk about what our kids in Mentor are doing and what our kids and what our teachers are doing in Mentor. And so our success and our best ideas come from our teaching staff. So this was a room with a few other superintendents, U.S. Department of Ed, at the White House. And one of the first things I said was the smartest people to work on this project aren't in this room at the White House. The smartest people are in the classrooms. So our kids are really good about telling us what they need, and our teachers are too, and there needed to be more components of the teaching staff that were a part of that presentation. This is not a stock photo. These are our kids, so I love this picture. We are also part of a group called the League of Innovative Schools, which now is 73 school districts in the United States, one over in Germany. That's a Department of Defense school that's collaborating. We're working with and talking to other schools about what they're doing, talking to other teachers about what they're doing. This group also, you might have seen it, some of our social media sites have been talking about the CAL project. The CAL project has nothing to do with agriculture. The CAL project stands for California, Ohio, Wisconsin. So one of our teachers in one of our schools at Ridge Middle School is teaching a class with a teacher in Kettle Moraine, Wisconsin, and teaching the same class with a teacher in Vista, California. And so the kids are collaborating, they're talking to one another, a lot like what the business world would do, a lot different from when we went to school. We have something called the Quality Profile Report. If you go to our website, you can find a link there. If you're a parent, you should have received an email with the link as well. The state of Ohio puts out a local report card about how schools are doing, and that's just based on test scores in certain subjects. So there was a movement about 2 years ago for school districts to talk about what else their community values. So I really encourage you sometime soon to check out our quality profile report. Again, the link is on our website and you can find it. So it's not just test scores, it's talking about our kids and our teachers and the successes they have in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Couple things to mention, and Ohio is getting better. So we were sort of an over-tested state. I think we're still at that point in terms of assessments for our kids. There was a third grade reading guarantee that maybe you heard about, that if the kids weren't on their right reading level by the time they were in third grade, we were supposed to retain them. So at the end of the day, we are in our third year of this project, and we've only had to retain one student who wasn't on the right reading level for their grade. And I'll tell you this, I hate retaining students because I had not seen it very successful, quite honestly, in my 21 years in education. This one student, though, it was in their best interest because this student had bounced around a lot and missed a lot of gaps in their schooling. So we're really proud of the fact that for the majority of our kids, this was not an issue. So the state puts this in place, and I have to give a letter out. I don't. Someone does it for me, but I sign letters that say even when the kids are in kindergarten, in first grade and second grade, that dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I'm sorry your child is not on the right reading level. We're going to work with you, but if they're not on the right reading level, we have to retain them. And we give that to kindergarten parents. And how is that for a first-time kindergarten parent to hear? So anyway, we're working on things like that. The rule or the guideline didn't change anything other than we have to notify people. Our kids now at the high school, this is a change that we just put into place last year. We are having all of our 8th and 9th graders take the PSAT and our 10th and 11th graders as well. And so we just started doing this last year. So before it was an option. Now we provide that for all of our kids. And we have the largest National Merit semifinalist and commended students at any one time in our history as a school district. Generally speaking, before we had all of our kids do something like this picture would have had about 3 kids and they all would have fit on the bench, and that would have been it. So once we started providing it for our kids, this group really increases, so we're really proud of that. We're also proud of our kids and the things they do outside of the classroom. So the top left picture is our Sparkle cheerleading group that presented down last year at the Ohio School Boards Association conference for all the school boards in Ohio. Our band is going to states on Friday. Science Olympiad has been gaining traction and making the national meets. Our Model UN has been performing really well, and then we have playoff game Saturday night. Also have a play starting Thursday, running through Saturday. I could go on and on about the things that our kids are doing every day. And the key to that, and again, our best ideas come from our teachers. And so I don't want it to be a top-down thing. So a lot of the things that we're doing with instruction, with the technology in the classroom, again, comes from our teachers, and we're trying to provide the support for them and build things out to scale. When I talked about that one teacher a couple minutes ago who's working with his own students, but also students in California and Wisconsin, he's the gentleman in the red shirt, Sean St. Hilaire. So just to give a shout out to him. We had a huge infusion of young teachers and new teachers to our district this year. The state teachers retirement system underwent an extensive change. So if you were eligible to retire, you did. So we lost a lot of our institutional knowledge, so to speak, but we're welcoming our new teachers, so we were excited about that. Every year also we recognize at least 5 teachers for excellence in teaching, and they are nominated by their peers. And so we were happy to recognize those 6. I hope a few of those names register with you. We value our partnerships in our community. Again, a lot of it is just networking and talking to a lot of you who are in this room and others too about what we should be doing for our kids. I don't know if I can talk about this, Gary and Rick, but I'm going to because I'm far enough away from you, I think I can. So we have a partnership with Lake Health. They've been a great partner for us. We have our Cardinal Clinic attached to our high school for our staff that really helps us reduce costs on our insurance for our employees. But you might have read in the paper that we're looking at a zoning change to have a wellness center built on the campus here at Mentor that would be that way in the grass if it happens. If I were allowed to talk about it, that's where it would be. But the benefit to us is it's not going to cost us, the school district, money. It's going to offer our students health care options in terms of classes that they can take, so our kids will be able to hopefully get some credits for future once they graduate. So applied physiology or OT-PT type classes for our kids, and also provide a aquatic center for our swim teams. We're not sending them out to Cleveland State and or Spire. Business advisory has been really helpful in terms of working with our kids. Christine Blake, I know, is here, I think, and she and her and all the banks were really instrumental in talking to us about what our kids need for financial literacy. So the Ohio Department of Education added that component into what we were doing, and then they were able to give us a lot of the curriculum that our teachers use. We also have a speakers board that Patty Perry has been very helpful with in getting launched. If I start naming names, I'm going to forget people, so I'm going to try to stop and not do that. But business advisory has been really key for our kids with different senior projects, getting jobs, quite honestly. And so we want to, A, get our kids jobs, but B, be the main provider for that workforce. I'm almost finished. So if you are in social media at all, a lot of what you saw today, I'm hoping that you would have seen. If you're on Twitter, you can follow either the district or myself, and a lot of times the two intertwine. And those addresses are listed there, and also our Facebook accounts as well. So we push out as much as we can that way because it's quick and easy. A lot of times, the things that we put out and you see involve our kids, which is what we want the content to be, or our teaching staff. I'm going to turn it over right now. Which one am I turning it to? Vanessa from Burgess & Burgess. She's going to talk to you now about the next phase of the morning.
Switch. I'll take your clicker.
What are you giving me?
A handshake.
Thanks.
There.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. As Mr. Miller was saying, the purpose of these meetings is to be able to gather your input. But first, we're going to give you some input so that you can think about and process that information. And then when we ask you some questions, some of your ideas and your perceptions, it'll be based on what you've heard today, but also your unique perspective from the community. As part of the inputs, he talked a little bit about instruction and learning and technology and grants and business partnerships. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the community research that we conducted earlier in the year. And I just want to remind you that when you conduct community research, it represents a snapshot in time. So people react to, yes, some of the information they've heard from the district, from the schools, but also what's happening nationally, but what's happening in their homes as well. So sometimes when you look at this research, you think of all of the items that you perceive and that you absorb and that you react to is represented here. The community research represents both qualitative and quantitative research components. What that means is that we start out by asking open-ended questions of unique groups of community members. So we first talked to teachers and staff in listening sessions. This used to be called focus groups with a two-way mirror, but that's not how they're conducted anymore because people then measure what they're going to say. So instead, we just sit and we talk with a guide of questions aimed to get people to start talking and tell us what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and how their school day moves day to day. So we started with teachers and staff. We also talked to parents. And then we conducted depth interviews with community leaders, 23 community leaders. Some of you probably conducted or completed those interviews. It was probably early spring. I know some of you I recognize from the list, so I know we talked to some of you. And then also with building administrators who might not have day-to-day contact with students, but are leading some of the initiatives. And then we sought to quantify that research through surveys. So if people told us what their ideas were, we then measured it with a larger group of people through online surveys. We conducted two separate ones, one for parents. Actually, it was for community members, but 90% of the respondents were parents. And then an online survey of teachers and staff. These online surveys, very separate from the listening sessions, where instead of talking to 10 to 15 people at a time, you're talking to, in the case of parents, over 860 respondents, but with teachers and staff, there's 369. So while you get, technically, with those listening sessions, a very self-selected sample, everybody's invited, but I opted to come, and I opted to come because I either have an axe to grind or I'm a cheerleader when I have something very specific to say. You tend to lose the middle majority, so we pick those up through the online surveys. When we talked to community leaders, and that represented members of clergy, business and industry, civic leadership, neighborhood leaders, they told us that they believe that the schools are a major reason why people live and move here, and I know we have realtors in the room that can attest to that. And they noticed a change in the community, and many of you have probably noticed these changes too, but one of our clergy members that we interviewed said it really well. The community's changing. We're conducting more funerals than baptisms now. So as people are aging, there are less children, and that's noted in the school's enrollment. They talk about these things when we ask them to It's things like sports, but they were quick to mention technology and innovation. And of course, it coincides with the timing of this big building, so it makes some sense. But also, they talked about how proud they were of the teachers. They were excited about the Straight A Fund grant. They understood the possibilities and what that meant, not just for the schools and for the students, but for the community in general and for business. But they did say that they wanted to see more outreach to the broader community. So if you're a parent, you know what's happening. But if you're not a parent, and we know that 80% of communities' electorate are not parents, they tend to know less, and especially when it comes to the long-term vision and the direction. That is part of the reason that you're here today, to make sure that we're not just getting your input, but that we're sharing the information about what we're learning with you so that it spreads out to the community. Teachers and staff, again, as the front line, they're a little bit more, significantly more invested than, let's say, the greater population. But they believe that their educational quality is high, which also coincides with what we've heard from parents and community members. And they believe that the district does a good job operating within the budget. They know that as everybody's making more difficult decisions about finances, they appreciate that the district is doing that and doing that well. What I thought was interesting is sometimes they said that the district is doing too good of a job operating within the budget, and they're feeling the pinch financially within their classroom. 80%, and then again, this is quantified through the online survey, agree that investing in technology is the right thing to do. And currently, 67% believe that the balance between technology and then the traditional classroom learning is the correct balance. Obviously, there's about a third there that think that it might be swinging too much one way or the other, and that is all dependent on what they're used to doing and how quickly things are changing. Teachers tended to feel less informed about the long range of district's goals, so they wanted to know more about that. They wanted to be involved more, and that's why some of them are here as well today. And something that we've heard both from teachers and staff and parents is that the overwhelming amount of state testing and state mandates is taking its toll on the classroom and in the community. And one of their concerns, and I think that everybody can relate to this, is that you're trying to do too much. You're trying to be something to everyone, everything to everyone, and that becomes quite a burden, especially for the K-12 district. Now, when we talk to the community in the bigger context, so this was, again, some listening sessions, but an online survey with nearly 1,000 respondents, overwhelming pride in the district. 96% agree that you have either extremely high or very high quality education. That's a really great quality rating. I'm sure in all of our industries, we'd be really happy to hear that type of quality rating for our work or our business. So they overwhelmingly believe also that investing in technology is the right thing to do, and that they appreciate seeing the district invest more and more in classroom innovation. They also believe that you're doing a good job using taxpayer funds. They don't see waste, and they agree that as you invest more in classroom technology, it gets more and more expensive. They wanted to hear a little bit more, however, about what the teachers were doing. They want to know more about teacher accomplishments, bragging points, and grants. But they were also unsure of what budget reductions or what cuts the district has made over time, where the teachers were feeling that acutely the broader community wasn't aware, which makes sense. People pay attention to what they need to pay attention to at any given point. Some of the shared concerns, we talked about a lot of positive things, some of the shared concerns among the community members across the board, so we consolidated it into one slide. They're worried about what's the next step for district finances. They all remember the 2003-2004 budget crisis, so they wonder, is it looming? Is it coming again? I know you've made some difficult decisions financially over the years, but there's a point where that has to eventually come to roost. Some people noted, this wasn't overwhelming, but some people noticed that there were outdated facilities at the elementary and middle schools. While they're proud of this at the high school level, they also understand that there's gaps and needs at the K-8 level. Some people brought up past issues with bullying and drugs, which we know is a community concern. It's statewide. We all saw the CNN special about drugs in our schools. And they also talked about options for those middle learners, the average learners, maybe not the college prep honors or the ones who need special instruction, but those who might need technical training, vocational education, getting kids right into the workforce after high school. There is some, not an overwhelming, but there's some caution about relying too much on technology over traditional teaching methods. We heard some people talk about too much screen time for their kids, where they're trying to limit that in their homes, but then at school they have more screen time, so they have a little less control over it. And again, they share the problem, the concern that state testing is out of control. It's over the top, it's too much, and it's consuming children. So while we can say that there's a lot going on positively, your community for the most part enjoys being on the cutting edge of technology. There are also some concern that that might go too far, that it might be too costly, but they want to understand what's the long-range plan, what's the long-range implications of having this classroom technology, how is this helping us academically, how is this helping us as a community move forward. But they trust you financially and economically to do a good job, and they want to know more. Overwhelmingly, we heard, we don't know enough. We want to talk more about the district's points of pride. Now, again, that was a self-selected sample because those were the listening sessions, and then again, the online survey where people opt in. But a separate survey was a telephone survey that was commissioned through Triad Research Group. Those are stratified by demographic, by age, by portion of the community where people come from to represent your actual electorate. That was for a different purpose, that was for funding options, but I wanted to extract some of the key findings because I think it's applicable as inputs for this group when we ask about your perceptions and ideas moving forward. Of the respondents, 20% had children in the district. That more represents what your actual community looks like versus the online survey where 90% had children in the district. So these are people then who are a little less informed, less involved day to day, but still their numbers were extremely high. When it came to quality of education in the district, remember on the online survey, 96% said it was excellent or good. For your broader community, it was 84%. Still significant numbers, still pretty high. Not 96%, but we'll take 80%. And we asked them about how informed they are. You'll see that the red line represents vary, the red tones are vary and somewhat. So you're well into the 81% range when it comes to feeling informed about the district. But what we care about are those who don't feel informed. So nearly 20% don't feel informed enough. And again, that's not a bad rating, but it just tells us that there's an opportunity there to continue to talk about it. Over 50%, it was 51%, believe that technology spending is the right amount. A little less than 30% believe it's too much. There's mixed responses, about 10%, and then a good 14% didn't know. They weren't sure how to answer it. They weren't involved. When we asked them to agree or disagree with the statement, whether or not high quality education affects property values, attracts families, attracts businesses, you see again in the red tones, that's an overwhelming amount of people that agree that it's important to protect your schools because there is a bigger implication for the community. It's nearly 90% agree that good schools mean good communities. And this is also a happy number for us to see when we ask them, you can trust, you can believe what the member schools tell you about the schools. We saw 65% of people agree, whereas only about 25% disagree and 10% don't know. So that is the input that I wanted to share with you about community responses, community attitudes. What I'd like you to know, is that this information will be available to you on a Google Drive. We're going to send everybody the link. We're trying to minimize our paper waste, but also want you to have this available because I know it's a lot of overwhelming information and I was moving rather quickly. Are there any questions about the community research or about what Mr. Miller was talking about earlier? Yes, sir.
I noticed you surveyed and questioned community leaders, parents, students, and what about the students?
We did not interview students, but that's an interesting info. We could. That's always something that we can add. What would you like to know from students?
Their perception of, is there too much technology? How much money is being spent on technology? What do they think of the overall educational availability at the high school?
We don't have any data on it. We had conversations with our kids about what that looks like. They were part of the process when we got the grant. I don't want to say the buy-in, but sort of the buy-in, what direction would you like to go, or do you like this, do you not like this device, and things like that. So while we're talking about whether or not it's the right amount of technology, it really depends on your perspective. A lot of times the kids, especially in high school, this may be shocking, but don't tell you positive things. You just hear sometimes when things don't go right, occasionally. But it's interesting. I think it goes back to a matter of perspective. I've been speaking, had the privilege of speaking in a lot of the PTA meetings lately, and it really depends on where you're at. For example, I had an elementary PTA meeting in this building last night, and I didn't get hammered, but I got, we need technology at the elementary level a lot, and hurry up, sort of, it's a balance. It's a balance, and we're trying to get right size.
But I think it's an interesting question, because what happens is we would administer that survey online, so we'd ask them to do more screen time to tell us what they thought about screen time. But that is something that's easy to do, and we could ask a short questionnaire, 6 or 7 questions, and ask the students their perspectives, and then we can share that back to this group when we meet again.
I think it's really important too, I'm sorry, I'm just jumping.
Go ahead.
I think it's really important too that we don't want our kids screen time to be 8 hours a day. That's not the intent. It's a tool. So it still goes back to really good classroom instruction with a really good teacher who has relationships with kids. And the screen stuff, the tech stuff is an add-on or is part of that. It doesn't replace good teaching. We don't want that to go away.
I think it's a great opportunity to ask the students for reasons like, as I've seen other schools go through this process and do technology and go so much to technology, certain types of classes are better taught technology. For example, I think it would be really good to get the students' perspective from like a math class. A math class with an online book and technology is very hard to do in that context, whereas a humanities class is perfect. So I think it would be really great to get the students' perspective, so when you're trying to decide the right technology and the right amount, what also is the optimum balancing to get the most out of it for the students' perspective in learning.
I think that settles it. I think we'll do an online survey with students, because one of the things that we'd like to do, and we're going to move into an exercise where you're going to do some work now, and I'm going to do less talking, and Mr. Miller's going to do less talking. But one of the things I want you to keep in mind, and I want you to bring it up, if we can get it without talking, is for you to tell us what other information you would like to see. What more would you like to know so that you can continue to react to that information too? And in subsequent meetings, in meetings 2 and 3, we'll talk about finances as well as facilities and technology. So you'll receive more information about the district as we seek more of your input. So, are there other questions about community research or about what Mr. Miller was talking about earlier? Well, you are conveniently, for the most part, grouped at tables, and those will be your tables to complete this first exercise. And just really from your perspective, I want you to keep in mind and share with us, what are the changes in the community, globally, regionally, your backyard, that you think the district must be aware of, that the schools must be aware of, so they can continue to prepare kids for the next stage of their lives, whatever their future is going to be, college, careers, military. What are the changes that you see? What are the global trends? What are the community trends? What do you see in your industry? What do you see on the news that you think the schools have to keep in mind so they can continue to prepare kids for their futures? So what do you see coming along the line that you want schools to be on top of?
And it might be something we're not knowing now at all.
Exactly. Think from your perspective. So broadly, we're going to give you about 10 to 12 minutes to discuss that, and just jot it down on your blue sheet of paper, and then we're going to ask you to report out, and we'll be logging it as we speak.
Renee Ochai, I'm the director at the Mentor Senior Center, and I also have 2 kids.
Christine Lake from Cardinal Credit Union, CEO.
Kevin Nalchik, I'm the county commissioner.
And Gary Robinson, I'm with Lake Delta.
But it was a financial literacy class that wanted to do this. And I also work for PNC Bank.
Top level and make $35 an hour. So you can have a highly educated person who's not ethically, morally prepared
The management level instead of the.
And I think there's so much value in learning at the ground up, and learning the easy tasks. I mean, English is so many tasks now. I don't care how much education you have, you gotta start with this
Not just county, but countrywide. So I think that's a reality. And I just went to a meeting with Auburn Vocational School. You talked about vocational. They have one.
There's more choice. It's much easier to read. There is this incredible demand. We're not directing kids that way. There's so many kids that are going off to four-year schools. They're all academically or emotionally prepared.
Is that where you were in high school then?
I work with
Yeah, I saw you take. So is that where you work with the high school then to help the high school student to determine that?
part of my job is
Right, and then they're less likely to come back if they don't, right?
And it's just like, like she's like Google says right now, that, you know, they can still hear, you know, and that's where, you know.
I'm going to start with this group because this group had the one with Kip Molnar and the sheriff, the one that had the largest amount. So let's see if quantity equals quality here in this group. So give me your top two global trends. I'll ask everybody for their top two. And if you see yours repeated, just skip it. I'm going to collect all of your sheets and we'll track all of your responses and report that out as well. But your top two.
We came up with 16. So
I know.
I would say top two. I would say vocational needs. I know Mr. Miller mentioned the idea of those average students. So you have your high performance and then I shouldn't say lower level, but those in maybe the bottom third, but those in the middle, the vocational needs. So we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need people to repair our cars and things like that. So the vocational needs, I think, would be one of the top ones.
Hey, Kip, let me just jump in on that real quick, and we'll go on. Real quick on that, and you're exactly right. It's sort of that average group, because when I talk to the guys on Tyler Boulevard with the manufacturing sector, in a nice way, they don't want the lowest ones. They want that middle group. And so we hear that a lot from them. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, next one.
I think the next one, and really several things, just from us and, mostly being in local government communities, the written communication skills of the people that we come across, the job interview skills, just grammar, what's lacking in math and English, just basic grammar based on, texting, which is just phrases or half words, things like that. So I think that would be our top.
All right, thank you. Now the group in the corner.
Again, kind of goes off of what the previous table was saying, kind of getting back to basics a little bit. Of course, this has to be blended with some responsibility in the home, but preparing for independent living. So if our students graduated today and had to go and live on their own tomorrow, would they know even the basic skills to survive, how to budget, buy insurance, functioning smoke detectors within your home? Again, just the gamut of commonsensical type things that you would need in order to be able to live independently. And then the other thing was recognition and acknowledgement of student behavioral health needs. That's being identified as a rising trend and something that the schools could potentially assist with.
Good, thank you. This group.
One of our global trends that we've noticed was that it's an aging population in Mentor, so that there's less new kids coming into the district. And another thing is that there seems to be more retirees in the city of Mentor, so there's less tax money available.
Interesting. Do you see those together, aging population, more retirees, less income base? So do you have another top?
The industry is moving more on becoming more challenging for new kids coming into the job field.
Oh, okay, more competitive job market. Good, thank you. This group, right here.
So Natural Key, from sort out, we had the number of students landing on college campuses that aren't college ready. Globally, that number is continuing to increase. These numbers will have efforts in place that continue to grow. And then we also talked about the percentage of unchurched communities growing.
Of what?
Unchurched.
Unchurched?
Those that don't associate themselves with a specific church. And so that creates some opportunities where the school might be taking on additional responsibilities that don't necessarily fall into this area.
Interesting. That's one I haven't heard, and I do this a lot, so that was one I've not heard. Thank you. Is there something new that we haven't heard from the other group so far in this group?
We mentioned about entrepreneurship, showing maybe a lab situation where you would learn how to start your own business, and how you get funding, and how you develop a plan. And we've seen these at the local colleges that are starting these types of labs and so on, and there might be something in there that would be very successful here. Trades we mentioned, community service projects, what it means to get back to your community, learning about the big picture, and then
So your place in the global
place
community.
it in the
So,
local
okay.
community, and how things are funded, how all things are functioning. Teaching the parents how to, learning to reduce future debt. Students coming out of college and the huge burden they have, there's ways around that, those types of things.
So kind of figuring out your place in the world. And we heard literacy, financial literacy earlier, and we heard about the program that the district has now with the credit union as well. So yeah, I think that's right on the right track. Anything new in this group that we haven't heard yet? Or something you'd just like to stress?
Yeah, a couple things mentioning global impact at like a younger age, introducing more cultural awareness and diversity and so forth from the younger age on. You know, not just living in the Metro USA level, but seeing that their impact on the greater world is so much more than what we have here. And the other would be just the choice of technology that's being implemented. For example, you know, Apple-based products, sometimes at the college level, choice of, you know, location and so forth. Linux-based applications, you know, they're not learning a little broader picture of technology that they can apply. So they're a little more limited in the technology that they're learning to be able to apply at least in college applications.
Very good. Interesting, thank you. When you're talking about cultural awareness and diversity, that's kind of, again, about learning your place in the global community, but about sensitivity and world perspective, bigger perspective. Okay, and then this group, this new joined group.
Arms echoed everyone else.
Is there any of those that you'd like to stress?
Work ready, life ready skills, well-rounded skill set, and the willingness to start at the bottom.
Oh, that's a good one. That's really good. So that's a good one. Okay, so we're going to, and this is very helpful, and I want you to keep these items in mind, because after this meeting, we're going to share these notes with you. Again, we'll share a Google Doc link, but for some of you who would like it emailed directly, we can do that too, but also we can bring hard copies at the next meeting, because these are the trends that we're, and if you think of anything else, please bring it to the next meeting. But these are the trends that I want you to keep in mind as we talk about planning the next steps in this group. When we talk about what our priorities are going to be moving forward, keep in mind these trends that you talk to us about, that you've noticed in your own lives or noticed in your families, because that will be a helpful perspective for the next set of priorities that we're going to come to together as a